Welcome to The Explainer. In the world of cloud computing, even tech that's been around for decades gets a super modern makeover. Today, we're going to break down two of those heavyweights, AWS Transfer Family versus Azure Blob Storage SFTP. We're going to see how they're similar, where they're different, and what it all really means for you.
So let's start with a really interesting question. SFTP, the Secure File Transfer Protocol, might feel like something from, the dial-up days, but it's still an absolute cornerstone of modern business. We're talking finance, healthcare, retail, you name it. Its rock-solid reliability is exactly why it's just as important today as it was 20 years ago.
Look, the problem isn't the protocol itself, it's the headache of actually running the servers yourself. You're constantly worrying about security patches, making sure the darn thing is online, and trying to guess how much capacity you're going to need. It's that operational nightmare that really opened the door for these managed cloud solutions.
Okay, so who's stepping into the ring to solve this problem? Let's meet our two cloud contenders. Both AWS and Azure have their own managed SFTP solutions, but as we're about to see, they take totally different approaches to cracking the same nut.
And boom, right out of the gate, you can see their philosophies are totally different. On one side, you have AWS with its Transfer Family, which is this big, comprehensive service that handles a bunch of different protocols. And on the other side, you've got Azure, with a super focused, native feature that's baked right into its blob storage.
Okay, before we get into the nitty-gritty of what makes them different, let's just be clear on what they both bring to the table. They do share a core mission after all.
So the big takeaway here is that both of these are designed to take that server management nightmare completely off your plate. We're talking fully managed solutions, no servers to patch, no late-night calls. They both plug right into their native cloud storage, and they both give you that security and scalability you expect from the cloud.
All right, now for the main event. This is where things get really interesting. We're going to go point by point and see exactly how these two services stack up against each other on the technical details.
First on the list, and honestly this might be the biggest difference between them, is protocol support. Depending on what your business and your partners need, this could be a complete deal breaker right from the start.
Yeah, AWS Transfer Family. The name really says it all, doesn't it? It's not just SFTP. You're getting the whole crew. FTPS, FTP, and even AS2, which is a really big deal for business-to-business data sharing in industries like retail.
And then you have Azure. It's the complete opposite approach. This thing is a specialist. It's built for one job, and one job only, getting your files over SFTP straight into Azure Blob Storage. That's it. Simple and to the point.
Okay, next category, how do your users actually log in? Let's talk user identity and authentication, because this is another area where their approaches just diverge completely, and it has big implications for how you'd integrate it.
Wow, okay, this table really lays it out. Look at Azure. It forces this pretty specific username format. You got to have the storage account name in there. Now, maybe for your internal teams, that's fine, but asking your external partners to use that, it can be a real pain. Then look at AWS. You get standard usernames, and this is the big one. Check out the authentication options. You can hook it into Active Directory, Okta, Azure AD, you name it. That is a huge deal for bigger companies.
All right, let's switch gears and talk networking. For a lot of businesses, especially if you're in finance or healthcare, this is make or break stuff. Think about it. Your partners need a static IP address to whitelist in their firewall. For them, that's often a non-negotiable.
And this right here is a perfect example of a major architectural difference. With AWS, you can actually stick the endpoint inside your own private network, your VPC, and slap a static IP address on it. Problem solved for those partners. But with Azure, well, you get a URL. You don't get a dedicated fixed IP. For some of those more traditional B2B setups, that can be a non-starter.
Okay, last but definitely not least on our technical deep dive, security controls. How much can you really lock things down and fine-tune the security to meet those super strict compliance rules that everyone has to deal with?
And we're seeing a pattern emerge, right? Again, AWS gives you that really granular, fine-grained control. You can set IP whitelist rules for each individual user. And check out that row on cipher control. You can literally pick and choose the specific encryption algorithms you want to allow. That's a lifesaver for compliance audits. Azure's controls are a bit more broad strokes. They operate at the whole storage account level, which is fine for many, but might not cut it if you have really complex security demands.
Whew, okay, we just went deep into the technical weeds. So let's pull back up to 30,000 feet and put it all together. What does this all actually mean in practice? What are the core strengths of each service?
When you look at AWS Transfer Family, the one word that comes to mind is versatility. It's like the Swiss Army knife of file transfer. You've got all the protocols, multiple places to store your data, and all these advanced authentication and networking controls. It's built to be a powerhouse for really complex, enterprise-level workflows.
And then there's Azure. Its strength is the complete opposite. It's all about elegant simplicity and that deep native integration. If all you need is a simple, no-fuss way to get SFTP access to your blob storage, you can get this thing up and running incredibly fast. It's all managed right there in the Azure portal you already know.
So what's the big picture here? If you boil it all down, what's the fundamental choice we're really looking at when we compare these two?
Look, at the end of the day, it's really important to understand that one of these isn't better than the other. They're just built for different jobs. This is a classic trade-off you see all the time in tech. Do you want the comprehensive, feature-packed toolkit that can do anything, or do you want the beautifully simple, specialized tool that does one thing perfectly?
And that leaves us with a really interesting question to chew on. As the cloud platforms keep maturing, what's going to win out in the long run? These super flexible, specialized services, or the simple, native features that are just built right into the platform? It's definitely something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer.